Okay, everybody, this is the lecture on CSS reset position and group activities we're going to do after position. We're on position right now, so let's go ahead and continue our lecture. And I might have to just reiterate over CSS position at the very end of this recording, okay? So sorry about that, guys. Bear with me. Let's go ahead and continue our lecture with position. All right, so we have 3 position rules we're going to learn about today. 3 position rules, and I'm going to give 2 examples for each of the rules. But before I show you guys anything related to position, let me start by saying this. I'm going to call this a forbidden rule, okay? I'm going to teach you guys how to use this rule, but I don't want you guys to use it. Use it sparingly, very sparingly. And so sparingly, in fact, that if you over abuse this rule on the test, you'll get marked down for it. If you over abuse this rule when grading the assignments, someone will note it and you'll have to fix it. If you over abuse this rule, even if you're not being graded by us, you're going to give yourself a headache. Totally going to give yourself a headache if you over abuse position. I can personally attest to that. Okay, don't over abuse position. So let's go over what they are. The hardest one to understand, I would think, is absolute. So we'll go over that one first, even if it doesn't make sense. We'll move on to relative, then we'll go to fixed, then we'll go back to relative, then we'll go back to absolute. So we'll go from beginning to end, and then end to beginning, seeing how each one works in several different examples. Okay, so the position rule. Let's go over what the position rule is. I'm going to move here to this website, W3 Schools. It's a reliable website for explaining HTML, CSS rules. And the first one I said we were going to go over, this first rule is called absolute. So what does position absolute do? Position is a rule where we can move items on our page, blocks of div on our page, and it's not going to be the same way we would have moved it using inline block or flex. This is like a hard move. This is like this is a way of moving it that well, let's see the examples to see what I mean by this. Okay, so here our first example. We have this here. I have this pre-built code that I'm going to show you guys. I'm also going to highlight what the platform says about position, but first I'm going to show you guys this example. All right, let's see what this page looks like. So I'm going to open it. Oh, I'm on the CSS. Okay. Okay, so here's our page. We've made no changes to it. We haven't used the position absolute yet. This is just the page that we're working with to start as a way of example. And what I'm going to be moving is this box here that says I am an alert. This is some arbitrary text, the OK button and the X. Okay, so this is what I'm going to be moving, this area here, using absolute. Okay, is that clear to everybody? This right here is what I'm going to be moving. So let's go ahead and add position absolute. Let's read what it says one more time. The element is positioned relative to its first positioned ancestor element. So what's the ancestor element of this here? Okay, so let's find it. It says I'm an alert. Okay, this div here is called message. Where does message live? Okay, who's the parent of message? Who can tell me by looking at this?
Container?
Container.
Yeah, container.
Right, container is the only one that's a level above message. Everything else, this H1 and the p tags below it, those are the siblings, right? So the parent is the container. And what does the rule say? It says it's going to move relative to its first positioned parent, relative to its first positioned parent. Okay, so what can that mean? All right, so let's go ahead and find our message. Here it is. All right, I have the code here to tell me where I'm going to apply position. This is my message div. I'm going to apply position absolute. And I'm going to say from the top, I'm going to have to give it some place to move from. Okay, so I'm going to say position absolute. All right, this is how I'm going to move it relative to its parent and from the top 50 pixels. So let's go ahead and uncomment this code. Oops. So uncomment this code. Here we are. Okay, let's see what it looks like now. It's changed. Let's see how it changes as I edit the code. Okay. All right, so I'm going to remove 50 pixels. I'm going to remove position absolute. As soon as I add position absolute, you'll see that the text below it scoots up underneath or behind it. And we don't see the beginning text as we did before, right? The first words we see here, lorem ipsum dolores. So that's going to scoot up behind this message section if I apply position absolute to begin with. It's ignoring as if it wasn't there now. It's moved up. Now, if I say I want to move this message section from the top 50 pixels, it's finding its place from its container, and it's moving 50 pixels from the top. It's finding its container. Remember, its container we said was called class container. And it's moving 50 pixels from the top of its container. All right. Let's move it, let's say, from the bottom of its container. Now, you see it jumped all the way to the bottom. And it found a place here to exist 50 pixels from its container. What if I say left? 50 pixels left from its container. Okay, this is what position looks like when we say 50 pixels left. And we can also predict what it would be like right? It's a little bit difficult to understand position absolute. So we're going to come back to this one. All right, like I said, we're going to move on to the next rule. Let's just observe how this behaves, okay? The text in the same area, its neighbors, ignored its space. It moved up as if it didn't exist there, it took its space. And this, when we say absolute and how much we want it to move from this position, it does so. So now it's 50 pixels from the right of its container. Okay, let's move along. I'm not going to do a pull check to see if we understood this. We'll come back to understand it later. I just wanted to introduce this one first because it's the most difficult. Okay, so let's go ahead and see another example of position absolute. See another example of position absolute. So this time I'm going to close everything here. I'm going to example 2. Let's see this in action. Here we have three boxes within a container here, this yellow one. let's look at our container in this instance. All I said on this container was display flex, so that they are side by side next to each other, as you see, the green, pink, and blue. Here's box 1, box 2, and box 3. These are the green, pink, and blue boxes. They all have the same height, width, and margin. All I'm going to do now is play with box 2. I'm going to add position absolute to box number 2. Let's see how it behaves. Okay, let's move things around so we can see both things at once. Okay, I'm going to add position absolute here. And I'm going to say, let's move this first. What happens when we apply position absolute? We don't even have to add top, left, bottom, right. What happened there? Let's see it again. We're keeping track of our pink box. As soon as we say position absolute, what happened there? Who can describe what happened there to me?
Does it cover it?
Yeah, it went over.
Yeah, it moved over. It didn't respect the space of the green one there, right? It moved over. And so did the blue one too. The blue one acted as if there was no green one there as well. Just scooted over. And now pink is on top of the green, and blue moved to where pink previously was because everything shifted over. Okay, so keep that in mind. This is the difference between absolute and the other rules. You'll see the difference in just a minute. Let's add some rules here. I'm going to say position absolute, and from the left, also let's move it 20 pixels. And it moved 20 pixels from the left. Did you see that? The pink one moved 20 pixels from the left. It's still reacting just to its container div. Everything moved over as if it didn't exist. But now we're actually moving this pink one 20 pixels from the left. We can move it even more. Let's move it 60 pixels. Now let's move it 100 pixels. Should go even farther. Okay, do you see how the pink just keeps moving from the left and everything is still there? It was just overlapping it.
So basically, position absolute just makes it to where it doesn't respect any of like the border or margin rules.
Yes, well, not exactly, but what happens is that its neighbors don't they react as if, let me show you again. So this is the beginning. If I add absolute and say from the left, this pink one is going to be here by default when we use absolute, and then we say from the left move 250 pixels. This green and blue one are still going to be there. The blue one's going to shift over as if the pink didn't exist, and now pink is going to be on the right. So let's go ahead and show this. Do you see how that worked?
Yeah.
Okay, again, position absolute's a little bit more of the difficult one of the three to understand. Its neighbors acted as if it didn't exist. And we said move this one from the left 250 pixels. So it moved itself from the left of its container 250 pixels. Actually, you know what?
Because it's absolute, it could overlap or anything,
Yes.
basically.
It overlaps.
It gives it like basically like the kind of like exclamation mark, like the just important. Is it kind of the same?
Yes, it overlaps its neighbors, and its neighbors scoot up behind it as if it didn't exist. It's now like on a Z axis. It's in front of.
Okay.
Okay. Let's just launch a poll to see how well we understand it right now. I'll check in on absolute a little bit later. Okay.
Wait, so is this the forbidden method or?
Sorry?
Is this the forbidden method you were talking about, or?
Everything related to position is going to be forbidden. Only use it sparingly. I'll even tell you guys where and when you can use it. Okay, we'll talk about that at the end. Where and when you can use these positions rules.
Because I heavily relied that on my profile page assignment, so.
Right. And that there's one place on the profile page assignment where you can use it. There's one instance where you should. Okay, so this is position absolute. Let's move on to the next one. The next one we're going to move on to is relative. Position relative. So what does position relative say? The element is positioned relative to its normal position. All right, let's just go with this so far. Let's not even go with this example. The element is positioned relative to its normal position. Okay, all right, so let's see an example of relative. Let's see it on our first example. Okay, so I'm going to take this here. This is going to go here. And this is going to go here. All I'm going to change here now, I'm going to reset this so we get a fresh view. Okay, here we are. This is our original view of our page. I'm going to now add position relative. Let's see what this does now. So far, nothing's changed, right? Nothing's changed. Still the same. And what did we say this rule does? Position relative to its normal position. Okay, so its normal position. Let's keep that in mind. Now I'm going to say top. Let's say 100 pixels. Relative to the top of where it normally was, it's going to move 100 pixels. This is different than absolute. See how the text, its neighbors did not act as if this one doesn't exist. It's still respecting that space that it was occupying, but we are still overlapping our text because we said we want this to be relative to where its normal position should be. I just wanted to move it 100 pixels from the top. And that's what happened here. What if I say relative to its normal position, I want you to move from the bottom 50 pixels. Who can tell me what they think will happen now? Is it going up or down?
Up.
It's going up. And now it's covering the title. So this empty space area below is where it was normally occupying, but now I said relative to its normal position, move 50 pixels from the bottom. So it did that. All right, let's try another position. All right, relative to your normal position, I want you to move from the left 50 pixels. And that's why now I have a little gap area right here. You can't see it. This little area here. That's the pixel amount we said to move from the left. Okay, let's just do right for the sake of learning. Right, I'm going to say 150 pixels. And what do we see? From the right, we moved 150 pixels right here. That's why it moved over this direction. This text here didn't move up. It still respected its space. So that's how it's different from absolute. All right, let's see this on our second example. Okay, let's delete here so I don't get so confused. Close all. Okay. All right. Let's take away our rules and reset our second example. Here we are. Here's our second example from the beginning. Now let's play with the pink one and say position relative make sure you spell it correctly. Okay, position relative, and I'm also going to say from the left 40 pixels. That's how relative works. The only thing that's moving is the thing that you have targeted. The tag or div that you have targeted is the only thing that's moving. Okay, nothing is moving around it relative to its position being moved. The only thing that's moving is what we're targeting, and it's from its normal position where it would have been if relative was not applied. Let's move from the top. Let's move it 140 pixels. So now it's 140 pixels from the top of where its normal position is. How can I make this pink box overlap the green?
Position absolute.
Position right,
Right? Okay.
but 250.
250. Okay.
Yeah.
So position absolute would do that. You're right. But we're working on relative right now. Okay. So we're just working on relative. This pink one now moved from the right 250 pixels. And what happened here? It completely disappeared.
So because it's not absolute, it like
No,
doesn't
what
take priority.
happened was it went way off the page, 250 pixels.
Oh, too much.
Right.
Too
Yeah.
much. Okay.
Yeah. So let's make it 50. And there, it's back on the page. Let's increase it a little bit more. Let's see, 150. Now it's going off the page. It's a little bit still in there though. Okay, let's take a poll. How well do we think we understand position relative now?
Yeah, this one seems pretty easy. You're just gonna move it from wherever it's at.
Right. I'm glad you think so. Yeah, it's a little bit easier than absolute, right? A little bit conceptually easier. We're just moving this one thing in particular. From the left, this many pixels. From the right, this many pixels. Okay. All right. And for our last position, our last forbidden rule here, position fixed. Position fixed. Let's read what position fixed says. The element is positioned relative to the browser window. Okay, that's different. That's not from its ancestor element. It's not from its parent. It's not from its normal position. It's now saying from the browser window. All right, so let's see what this looks like. Let's go to our first example. Pull up our CSS on the right. Okay, now I'm going to eliminate the position rules I had there before. Let's take a look at our document. Here we are, back to the start. And we said position, what was the name of the rule? You can tell me.
Fixed.
Fixed.
There we go. Position fixed. And position fixed said from the window, right? And now we already see a difference. Let me comment it out. Something familiar is happening, right? What it looks kind of similar to what? What does this look similar so far now to? If I uncomment it again, it's kind of similar to absolute, right? Look, the text is going up behind it like it was before.
I think it just freezes the entire thing.
Yep. Well, now the difference is it's fixed relative to the window. To the window.
Oh, okay.
That's
So
gonna
now
stay.
as I scroll up and down, this thing is moving with the window. It doesn't matter where I scroll. This is moving with the window, isn't it? let's say from the top, I want it to be right in the center of my page. So let's give a pixel prediction here. How many pixels from the top should I move it to make it in the middle of my page?
150. Or no,
150?
about 200.
I'm gonna say 400. 400's right in the middle of the page. No matter where I scroll, this thing is gonna follow me because it's fixed to the window. Okay, the whole entire window. No matter where I go in the window, this thing is gonna follow me. Has anyone ever been to a website where they've seen something like this before?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the learning platform website. If you open DojoBot,
Mm-hmm.
how it just follows you.
Yeah,
that-
or like you go to you go to read a story, a newspaper story, right? Online, you go to Google. Oh, look, this is an interesting story. I'll click on it. Oh, I have to subscribe to your newsletter. I have to pay a monthly subscription fee. Okay, I have to click OK to continue and put my email. This is the kind of thing you would see for that. Fixed is
or like the accept cookies thing.
accept cookies. Exactly. Yeah, it's like it won't leave you alone wherever you go on the website. It wants you to pay attention to me, do this thing. So this is an instance where you would use that forbidden rule for this specific type of thing. You don't want to use position fixed to arrange your divs on the page or any of the position rules. Okay, and I'll explain why after we go over them again. All right, so how well do we, oh, let's go over our second example just to solidify what we are seeing here. All right, so I'm gonna close all. Let's move this here. All right. Let's remove position relative. Let's reset our 3 boxes. Here we are. Okay, now I'm going to add position fixed. It's a bit like absolute, right? But now I can scroll a little bit on this page and you can see it's popping up behind it. So let's add position fixed. And I'll say from the top as well, I'm going to add, this time I'll do 250 pixels. All right, so its surroundings didn't respect where its original area was. They've scooted over behind it just like it was an absolute. But now when we say from the top, we're not saying from the top of its container, even though its container is this yellow one on top. We're saying top from the whole entire window itself. All right, so let's say,
Could you do the like 0 auto trick to make it always in the middle of the screen? Like how you do with margin?
So okay, let's just do it for the sake of experimentation. Margin 0 auto. No. These position rules are their own thing. You can't really mix them with the others.
No, I'm not saying add the margin, just like how you had the 250 pixels or whatever it was. From the right, from the left, could you just have, is there a way to do it to where it's always in the middle as a fixed position?
Yeah, you just find that you can even make it from the
spot.
Yeah, you can even make it by percentage. Let's try to make it by percentage work. From the left, I want it 50%, from the top 50% of the window. So no matter how I close and expand my window, it's always going to measure 50% from the top in the middle. And now it's fixed to that window position. No matter where my window goes, it's going to try to find that 50% mark from the top and from the left.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Okay, let's do now a poll. How well do we understand this new forbidden rule fixed from the window itself, not from anything else? Okay, well, we have a few minutes left. We'll go over them one last time. Now we'll go back in the direction that we started from. And now I want you guys to help me predict what should happen again. We should now be a little bit more familiar with these rules. I want you guys to predict as well what we think should happen. Okay, so now we're going to go back to this one here. I'm going to remove position fixed. Second one we went over was called relative. So let's go back to relative. Let's read the rule for relative. Position relative to its normal position. Okay, so if I add position relative here, what's going to be what's going to happen? If I add position relative, what should I see any difference on this page? Should I see any changes?
No, you should just take it out of a regular format and then you can pour a pixel or percentage to move that square.
Yes. So relative doesn't move it, and everything still respects its space. Now we're just moving it relative to its normal position. So the position where it would have been had it not been touched at all. Okay, so from the top, I'm going to move this one 300 pixels. And now it's moved from its original position relative to that normal original position, 300 pixels. Okay, so let's do a poll. How well, again, do we understand relative? This one seems to be probably the easiest one to understand, right? This one and fixed. Okay. All right. And for this one here, I think all we need to do is say position relative back to its normal position. Everything's being respected. Now I'm going to say from the top, I want you to move 40 pixels. Now it moved 40 pixels from the top of its normal position. Everything else is still in place. Nothing else has changed. The only thing we're affecting here is relative to its normal position. Where would it be? Okay, nothing is scooted up behind it. Its original space is still being respected. All right, so now let's go into back to the most difficult one, position absolute. Let's read it again. Element is positioned relative to its first positioned ancestor element. So relative to its first parent, its direct parent, relative to its direct parent. So, okay, let's go to our CSS for this one. By this one, I mean this one. Okay, this here. So I'm going to change the rules again. Let's apply position absolute. Did I do that correctly?
Spelled absolute wrong.
Okay, there we go. Now the text has moved up behind it. Its original space was not respected. It's gone up into that place, and any place we move it, we're moving it relative to its container. So from, let's highlight its container. How about that? So I'm going to take this outline and I see here, I'm going to highlight the container. And I'm going to say position absolute from the top, 50 pixels. So from the top of its container, it's now moved 50 pixels. Everything else has scooted up behind it, did not respect its space. Do we see how that works there? It doesn't move with the page, it just stays right there, absolute from its container. Okay, let's try it with our second example. This is our second example. We're going to switch this here to be position absolute. Now this has gone and scoot over. Everything of its neighbors has moved as well. Each one of its neighbors has moved except for the green. Excuse me here. So what we're looking at is box 2 now covering over box 1. And we're going to say position absolute from the left, 350 pixels. So it's now moved over from the left of its container, 350 pixels. Everything else around it has shifted into its place. All right, last pull check on absolute. Okay. Nice job. Looks like we're understanding a little bit better than when we first started. Okay, again, these are rules I don't want to see you guys use or abuse. On the test, if position is ever going to be used, I will tell you how it would be used, okay? For example, your test may have a little cookies bar at the bottom. That's where you want to use position, okay? In any other instance on your test, you wouldn't need to use it. On your assignment, let's look at profile page. You see here how this image is straddling this teal div above and the white section below. How is it in both at once? What position would you use? What rule would you use here to make it go down into that white section if you had placed it originally in that blue?
Position relative down. I mean top.
Relative. And what does relative do?
Just moves from the spot that it was originally at.
Okay, so position relative could work. Yep, I think that's right. What about position absolute? Do you think position absolute might work?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so when you get to this point in your assignments, this is you can't skip this assignment. This is a core assignment. Remember, put this profile image in this blue area and use position to move it between the two. That's the only thing you would need to use it for on this entire page.
So I got to start over because I just spammed the hell out of the position property.
Yeah. If you use position too much, then you're gonna have to move. You're gonna have to move everything else relative to where you moved that original first position, and then it's a game of telephone. You know that game where you tell someone something and then they hear it and then they repeat it to their neighbor. It's kind of like that, in that when you use position to position a div on the page, then you have to figure out how its neighbors are going to react to that and use position to style that. And then you end up styling your whole entire page using position. And then you realize this is not going to work on most browsers. This is hardly working on my own browser. I abused position. Now I have to start over. Okay, so don't abuse it. Use it sparingly. It's like a very specific situation where you would have to use any of these, not a general situation, not like what we're using flex for. Okay. So, okay, you know what? For the sake of the recording, I'm just going to go over CSS reset so that we can understand it real quick. I know we understand it. And then we're going to break out into a group activity for about 10 minutes, and then we'll end this session. Okay. All right, so let's go over CSS reset for the sake of the recording. I thank you guys for being patient. What we said about CSS reset that we missed was that it resets all the default margin and padding to 0. So H1s and p tags that would have default margin. We are setting it to 0, so we have a blank slate whenever we're coding. Okay, I'll be using this CSS reset, especially in this afternoon lecture when I'm creating a demo. All right, so that's the next lecture. We're going to be creating a demo, and also what I'll be doing during the demo is cutting up a website into different sections, just like how yesterday when we were doing the PA Mondrian art, we had to decide which sections of that square were going to be rows and which sections were going to be columns. And I said that this technique is going to be the same technique we use whenever we analyze a website and cut it into pieces, so that we can recreate that site knowing which pieces are going to be rows and which pieces are going to be columns, so that we can arrange it in the proper order. So what I want us to do is I'm going to break us out into groups. I want us to work as groups and either pick one of these two websites, either pick Best Buy or Target. All right, either one, Best Buy or Target. I don't think you guys need links to that. Just Google it, Best Buy or Target's website. And I want you guys to take 5 to 10 minutes to talk about how you would divide up this web page so that you could recreate it. Okay, and I'll do a little bit of that now. Let's go. I won't do Best Buy or Target. What's another general website I can visit that would
Walmart.
Walmart.
Amazon?
There we go. Walmart. Here we are. Walmart.
No, Amazon.
Amazon. Well, I'm already here on Walmart.
I'm just kidding.
Okay. All right. All right. So here, let's go ahead and break down how this page should look, or how we might break it up ourselves to recreate. So when I look at this page, the first thing I read it from top to bottom, right? So the first thing I notice is this giant blue section on top. So this would be the first thing I would realize. Okay, there's this nav bar section. And in this nav bar section, there's like 2 rows, right? There's that top row that has the Walmart logo, the search bar, the reorder my items, the sign in, and the cart. So that's the top. I would create two sections in this nav bar section. All right, the top of the nav bar and the bottom row of the nav bar. The bottom row has this area here. How do you want your items? And then my zip code, pretend you didn't see that. And then all those other buttons there: deal, Mother's Day, graduation, teacher appreciation, etc. Then we have the main content here. In this main content section, I see 3 columns. Okay, this left-hand column, which holds this image, or this div that has a background image. It holds this H1 and also this link. Okay, we can also, this image can bleed into this area, but we're going to say it's a background image. Okay, so we have a left-hand column, and in this left-hand column, we can have 2 rows, right? We have the top row that has the cozy home ideas, upgrade mom's tech, and this link below. All right, let's use different colors, and I'm going to encourage you guys to use different colors when you break it up, so that you can differentiate between areas. I should have been doing that to start. Okay, so then we have this middle. Oops, is there an undo? Yeah. Then we have this middle column here. This middle column holds this top row in the middle column. Top row in the middle column holds this H tag, this H tag, and these 2 links side by side. All the rest of it is a background image. Okay, and in the bottom row, we have 2 divs. I'm gonna just keep changing colors so it's easier to read. We have 2 divs. We hit one hat. Ooh, there we go again. Let me redo that. Change color, actually, not yellow. So we have on the bottom row in the middle column on the main content section. Oh, there we go again. I gotta change it to square. All right, bottom row, middle column. We have the left div and the right div. And you can see where I'm going with this, right? We have one more column we have to complete, this right column, and in this right column, we have 3 rows. Row 1 contains these H1s in that link with that background image. Row 2 and row 3. So that's how I would break down this page and create divs that correspond with these different areas. Okay, I would start with the nav, figure out, okay, what's the major sections of the nav? Okay, we have the top section, and the bottom row. Okay, so we'll divide the nav into 2 sections, and then we have the main content. In this main content, I see 3 columns, and those 3 columns, different rows, right? The left-hand column has 2 rows, the middle column has 1 row on top, row on the bottom, and on the row on the bottom, it has the left and right. So there's a row of 2 things here. We would have to use flex to make these go side by side. And then on the 3rd column, I just have 3 rows here. So to make these 3 columns side by side, what rule would I have to apply to make it go side by side there?
Inline block.
No, we want to use flex from now on.
Oh,
Flex. So in this main content, we have these 3 columns, right? These 3. We want to use flex to make them go side by side. All right, and that's it. That's all I think I need to show you guys. Do you have any questions? I'm going to break you guys into groups, and you're going to do this either for Target or Best Buy. Okay, we're going to only split up for a few minutes.
isn't that style float kind of works in the same way?
Okay, don't use float. That's so float is another forbidden one. So whatever you can do to avoid using float, don't use float. There's always a way to do it using flex. You don't need to use float.
Okay. Also, their website almost looks like it's grid.
Yeah, everything is on
Layout.
grid. Exactly what we want to do. We want to figure out on the grid how
No.
do we divide this grid?
What I mean is there's a layout called a grid, like, you know what I mean?
I think
This is-
that's what I'm saying. Everything
Oh.
is here on a grid. We have at the top of this here this rectangle. So we're dividing it into squares, into rectangles. How we should divide those rectangles and squares when we create is how we'll know whether we should use flex or not, whether how many columns we'll have to make in a row.
Well, I think he was referring to a rule grid.
Oh, a rule grid. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, there will be ways that we can divide our page into a grid in the future to make for dynamic views. Do you see how this page, it'll stretch with the window, or it'll be dynamic according to how I move it? That's more having to do with how a grid works for dynamic views. Right now, we're not working on a dynamic view. So when you create an assignment, just create a fixed window view, okay? A fixed window view. Start with that before we start making cool stuff to make dynamic views like this, okay? All I want us to do is to dissect the page into squares and rectangles and figure out how to do that as a group so that we can do that individually, okay? So I'll stop sharing. We'll create groups now. We won't take too long on this, 5 to 10 minutes, okay? You won't even have to present. I just want to go through the groups and see that you guys are doing it. Okay, so we'll stop this now. And then after this, we'll go ahead and break out into groups as we usually do, just do quick group activity. So I'll stop sharing. Let me stop or pause the recording. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I know that wasn't a terribly long group session. I just wanted to get your appetites wet and to get you in that frame of mind, that thinking of
Everyone's not
dividing a
back yet.
page into blocks. I know everyone's not back.
Oh, okay.
Welcome back, everyone. All right, so thank you guys for participating in that group session. I know it wasn't long, as I was saying, but I want to get you guys' appetite wet and to get you thinking in that frame of mind of breaking down websites into sections when you view it. Okay. And when you break down into sections, just like when we did the Mondrian activity yesterday, we don't start from a small point and work outward. We work out in. So what's the big container? What's the big picture? Okay, then we go in. What's the next big block that we can divide the sections into? Okay. So this is the way we're going to be thinking about and framing websites from now on. And all of our assignments as well. If we don't do this now with our assignments, break it down into sections, you'll realize that you'll run into some difficulty if you don't start with a plan first. Okay, so I will be demonstrating in the afternoon how I would do this, how I would tackle breaking down a website, cutting into sections, and then what sections do I begin starting with, and build from there. So, okay, so we'll do a demo this afternoon. We'll open up for lab and code reviews after that, so we can review our assignments. I'll let you guys know when that's available. Okay, and again, we're going to want to work on profile page and user card today. That's our goal. If you haven't finished previous day's assignments, work on those. Okay, and homework for tomorrow, we'll go over that next lecture. Okay. All right, let's end this session. Let's end this lecture, stop this recording. Does anyone have any questions? Okay.